Good morning everyone. This is Kailin Kamikawa. The other day, China Xi Jinping Jintao, he reported an article that issued a "loved country" diplomatic directive. We must increase the number of people who are friendly to China. Open, confident, discreet, humble, trusted, loved and respected. We must create such an image of China. Once, that there is an instruction from Mr. Xi Jinping. Unfortunately, I don't seem to understand anything about the end of China, and while the roots of its tongue are dry, in response to the G7 declaration pointing out human rights issues, the Chinese Communist Party media an illustration titled, "The Last G7, was released online. It shows an attitude that is hated by people all over the world. In the Chinese Communist Party media, Global Times, and China Microblogging, one illustration was posted. The title is The Last G7. It is a work of digital graphic artist Han Oki Ayu, pen name. In a parody of Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper immediately after its release, it attracted a great deal of attention, and at the same time, analysis by Chinese people appeared one after another. The illustration shows animals in hats in place of Jesus and his disciples. At the center of Jesus is the United States, symbolized by the bald eagle. The table prints dollars, but the raw material is toilet paper. On the left are Italy of the wolf, Japan of the Shiba Inu, Australia of the kangaroo, and Germany of the black eagle. Italy is represented by wolves Romulus, the founder of Rome, and his twin brother Remus. This is because of the myth that he grew up drinking wolf's milk. The Shiba Inu is a Japanese indigenous dog, like the Korean Jindo dog. It can be seen as a symbolic animal of Japan, but one Chinese internet user said, "I chose a dog instead of the Japanese national bird, the pheasant." It is a metaphor for Japan's attitude toward the United States. The black eagle is the national bird of the Federal Republic of Germany. On the right side of the United States are the United Kingdom of lions, Canada of beavers, and France of roosters. An elephant is kneeling on the floor under the table. Recently, India has been suffering from a new coronavirus infection, new pneumonia. You can see a piece of paper with the words, help me," nearby. The yellow water that elephants drink while bleeding from their heads is the urine of cows. In India, the myth that, if you eat cow manure, you will not get the new corona, has spread. In response, the Indian Medical Association has issued several statements that this is not the case. China was portrayed as a frog trying to climb up with money on the table. There are many other suggestions in the illustrations. First of all, Japan. Shiba Inu is pouring a green drink. However, a sign of radioactivity is drawn on the kettle. Everyone is drinking together with the permission of the bald eagle. It seems to be ironic about Japan's release of contaminated water. It seems that China is shit, but it doesn't seem to be known. Kangaroos are dripping with the Chinese flag, but they are about to disappear. In Hong Kong, Xinjiang human rights issue, Australia, which is in conflict with China in the Wuhan virus origin theory investigation, recently, trade with China has dropped sharply. One hand of a kangaroo, which is becoming economically difficult, has extended to the US dollar. A Canadian beaver stands with a female wood carving doll in her hand. She is the daughter of the founder of Chinese telecommunications company Huawei. It is believed to be Meng Wanzhou, Chief Financial Officer, CFO. Meng is still in court in Canada on suspicion of violating economic sanctions against Iran and fraud. China believes it is because Canada is looking at the complexion of the United States. Italy is eye-catching. The wolf is in a position to raise both hands and refuse. In The Last Supper, Peter's younger brother Andrew. The composition is the same as the one behind Judas Iscariot, who is dressed as not himself. He appears to have labeled the United States as not a traitor. On the contrary, it also means that it is as close as China. Italy is related to China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is an overseas expansion project. It is the only cooperating country in the G7. Of the three major European countries, the United Kingdom is right next to the United States. She is portrayed as if she were in a good mood in the United States. On the other hand, Germany and France sit farthest on both ends of the table. Green drinks have not been poured either. The meal of the Last Supper is a cake with the Chinese flag. And above the United States, now we can continue to dominate the world. The words, "throw this, we can still rule the world," are written. As of 13th, a considerable number of Weibo's comments, "We are coldly observing how the United States and Western countries are trying to treat China." It is the content. Is China a race that cannot look back on itself? If you have time to make something like this, you should think, why do you hate China? I heard that Polite, who lost to Miu Hirano, wrote many essays of self-reflection. After all, if I don't lose, can't I write? China is ostensibly opposed, saying that it is terrible interference with domestic affairs. However, if you look closely at the content and presentation method, you can see through the hesitation about diplomatic strategy. The official reaction to the G7 declaration was the Chinese embassy in the United Kingdom, where the G7 was set. An embassy spokesman presents a discourse in the form of answering questions to reporters, twisting the facts on issues such as Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, Hong Kong, Taiwan, etc. It is adding terrible domestic intervention to China, he said, expressing strong dissatisfaction and decisive opposition. He also argues with an unusually long sentence about individual issues. Regarding Taiwan, the source of tension in cross-strait relations is the Democratic Party is trying to provoke independence in collusion with outside forces. China must unify, said the issue of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. This is not a matter of human rights, ethnicity or religion, but of anti-terrorism, anti-division and de-radicalization, he said. For Hong Kong, for more than 150 years under British colonial rule, Hong Kong had no human rights or democracy. And so on. Regarding the G7's declaration of summit, mentioning the situation in Taiwan and human rights issues in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, the Chinese state media as an English version of the article, "It's a mistake to try to contain China," he said in an interview with an expert. I am reporting critically. Regarding this, the state-owned Xinhua news agency is in English. While he said he would work with China on issues such as climate change, in the name of supporting the international system under the rule of law, I mentioned Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Taiwan, etc. On top of that, if the G7 wants to exclude or contain China like her, that's wrong. According to his interview with an expert at the University of Cambridge who is familiar with China, he reports critically. On the other hand, the Chinese version of Xinhua news agency, he followed the G7 summit, although I told you that it was decided to provide 1 billion vaccines. It does not mention what China was mentioned in the leader's declaration. China has a double fifth festival holiday on the 14th, and the Chinese government has not yet shown an official reaction. It is expected to show strong opposition in the future. So, the Chinese end is still hysterically reflexing the spinal cord. I can't find any element that can be transformed into a loved country. In the country of China, power is still justice, even if it is criticized by mouth. It seems that nothing can be said to be a behavioral change unless it is beaten. Here, the international community needs to unite and show off its power to counter China. In that sense, discussions with Russia are extremely important. I'm also wondering if that point was discussed at the meeting between Biden and Putin. In that sense, the position of South Korea is also important. South Korea was invited to the G7 and soared. He doesn't seem to understand anything about, why was he called? That's exactly, no good. The suffering of people in China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan is likely to continue. That's all.